Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
Having the opportunity to get drafted and you're getting like notoriety in the community and I felt like I was Charlie the baseball player, and a lot of times you lose sight of like all you can do is put in all the work and try to find the right resources and do all those things to try to help you reach your potential, but you can't control, where that potential ends.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining today, he's a former MLB player. It's Charlie Tilson. How are you doing today, Charlie?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be on. I appreciate you including me.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we'd like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
So I'm from Wilmette, Illinois, which is just a little bit north of Chicago. And to be honest, like most former athletes, I love to play sports. And for me, it wasn't just baseball. I played soccer, I played football, I played basketball. It was year round for me, and I like to, do all kinds of different things, but there's no doubt I, really developed a love for baseball early on. I was fortunate. I had an older brother that just included me on everything. And, he became a diehard Sox fan at a young age, and, we were hooked, and it was a good time to be fans in Chicago. It was right around the 1998 home run race. So Ken Griffey Jr. was sort of our hero, but we also, got to watch Sammy Sosa doing his thing on the north side. And, it was a great time, to be honest. And, it was just a ton of sports for me growing up. I never would have imagined I'd have the opportunity to get to play in the big leagues myself, but it just started with a intense passion.
You talked about your brother being a White Sox fan. Between the Cubs, White Sox, which was your team? Or what was the team that you had cheered for?
Truthfully, I had no choice. You know how older brothers can be. But I will say, like, we rooted for the Cubs. We really, my dad was from Ohio, so he had no affiliation to either team. And whenever he would get tickets, we would go. And I will say, like, full disclosure, like, I'm a big Sammy Sosa fan at this point, but my brother was at the game when he corked his bat. And he came home from the game and like, just caught up in like sort of the controversy, was like, what, we're Sox fans from here on out, and there's not many of them on the north side of Chicago, so we were really going against the grain. And it just happened to be the perfect time to become a Sox fan too. This was 2001 that I think the incident happened, and the Cubs obviously had a great run in 2003, but the Sox had a young, exciting team. We loved going to US Cellular. At that time, I think it was US Cellular. And we would do the speed pitch. It was just the stadium, like, obviously Wrigley is unbelievable. It has its mystique, but Sox Park was just so much fun to be a kid. They had the fundamental zone. I would race against Scott Podsednik, and obviously 2005, the Sox just had a magical team, and they were so fun to watch. And for someone like me, I was kind of an undersized kid, but I could really run. And watching the way Ozzie Guillen managed that team with small ball and guys like Scott Podsednik, who, he had a big home run in the World Series, but he really, I think, only hit one or two the entire season, but he did so many things on the bases and bunting and moving runners over. And it was so inspiring for me. It really opened my eyes to, like, man, maybe there's a place for me to do something like that in professional baseball. And that was sort of where it all began.
Well, I'm glad you said White Sox because I'm from St. Louis. So Cardinals, Cubs, we would already have a rivalry on the podcast and we haven't even started the conversation. But I went to Wrigley and it was so spectacular. And then you hear like with the White Sox how they had that good year and then it's kind of like what happened to them in a way. And where you are now, are you still rooting for that team? Are you hoping that 2005 feel comes back for the White Sox, or do you have different teams now?
Yeah, well, I was actually drafted a Cardinal, so I spent 6 years in their organization, and I think the world of that organization. I think you're in a great spot. I mean, the one beef I have with them is getting rid of Mike Schilt. He was my rookie ball manager, and I was so fortunate. I mean, to begin professional baseball as like an 18-year-old and have someone like Mike Schilt coaching you is like a total advantage. And I think anyone who played for him would agree with that. He just is so good at teaching the fundamentals. And it was no surprise to me when he was having so much success, won manager of the year and all that stuff. I was bummed when they let him go because I think he wanted to be a Cardinal, for his career. But I still root for the White Sox. I actually, was traded to the Sox and made my big league debut for them and spent like parts of 3 seasons playing for them, which, was a dream come true for me. I mean, it was the team that, really helped me fall in love with the game, and to be able to put on their uniform my first time in the big leagues, it was like really a special thing. And I made great friends and had great teammates. Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu. Some of them are gone, obviously now. Like Abreu, we watched play Game 7 last night, but they're just it's a great organization. And for me, they gave me the opportunity to play in the big leagues, and I'll always be a White Sox fan.
I want to talk about something you mentioned a little while ago. You talked about being undersized and kind of making your own as a player. When you were playing initially starting out, was that something that you didn't have confidence in because the wide range of looks, athleticism, things like that, it kind of made you nervous on how far can I take it? Do people really see me as a starting player and feel like an undercard or a wild card in a way?
Yeah, I did. I knew like that my game didn't really, shine in the sense where I was going to be hitting the ball the hardest or hitting it the furthest. I will say, and in high school, my dream was to get a college scholarship. I didn't really have my sights set on pro baseball out of high school because of what you're saying. I just, I figured those opportunities were for bigger guys, perhaps even like guys from down south who play year round. But I had a great scout who kind of took me under his wing when I was in high school. His name was Dan Durst, and ironically, he was a scout for the White Sox, who I ended up with. But he saw something in my game, and he asked me to come try out for the area code team, which is like they take like 4 guys from Illinois, 4 guys from Missouri and Indiana, and they put together like a Midwest team. And there's a team from every region that goes out and competes for like a week in California, and it's a great tournament. There's always great players, but I made the team, which was eye-opening for me. Like I said, like I just didn't see myself sort of shining in that situation, but he recognized that like I could really run and I could change the game with my legs. And I was on the flight out to California sitting next to him, and he's like, giving me like the pep talk of my life. And he basically told me like, listen, like you have what it takes to play in the big leagues. You got to believe it. and here's what I want you to do. There's going to be tons of scouts in the stands, so you're not going to play the game, the way you maybe typically would, picking situations to run. You're going to show these guys, what you can do right from the jump. And he's like, if you get on first base, first pitch, I want you to steal second. And then once you're on second, first pitch, I want you to steal third. And sure enough, my first at bat, I got a hit. And I took his advice. I stole second, I stole third, and I ended up scoring. And my teammates, who I'd never met, they're from all over the country, were like, wow, man, you can really run. Like, and it gave me this confidence. I ended up hitting a home run the next day, which was kind of out of character for me, but it made me really, he helped me really believe, that I have what it takes. And that weekend really changed my career. I was a University of Illinois commit, but hadn't really heard from like SEC schools or anything like that. And after that weekend, I was, projected top 5 round pick in the draft. And I kind of discovered, I was capable of playing at a really high level. And that was, he really helped me kind of unlock that potential.
What position did you play?
I was a center fielder coming up. And then when I got to the big leagues, I played center, left, and right. Naturally, you find wherever you can get in the lineup. But yeah, I came up a center fielder.
Was that always that position that you wanted to play? Or if you had the opportunity to play a different position, what would have been that position?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was left-handed, so as I got older, I was sort of limited and what I could play. But growing up, I mean, I loved to play shortstop. I loved to play catcher. I had a pretty good arm, so I liked throwing guys out. And that's, something I'd encourage like kids to play everywhere. Don't find yourself in the mold of your handedness. Like me being a lefty, I knew I'd end up probably in the outfield. I wasn't big enough to play first base. But I think you develop a lot of skills and you learn the game, when you're playing all over the place when you're young. So yeah, I wanted to be a shortstop, to be honest with you, but there's no left-handed shortstops in baseball, unfortunately.
When I was playing, I always got put as a catcher and I hated that position. I think I did it for like 4 years. And I'm like you, I wanted to be in the infield because I prefer that was where the excitement was. Like, you're
Sure.
probably going to get a ground out. You're going to have that chance to throw it to first or whatever base. But they always stuck me at catcher. And I'm like, well, I got to do it. At least I wanted to play. I just did not want to sit on the bench. And
Yeah,
I feel like playing those positions that you're uncomfortable with or something you're not, it always teaches something about you. And I think that was the greatest opportunity for me. It kind of showed me I could be an in-game leader, even in that position. I'm able to show leadership in a way of helping the pitcher kind of get
mhm.
focused, mentally get into the game and stuff. And it kind of like looking back at it, I'm like, I liked where that went. Would I do it again? No. Like I would not be a catcher again. I think a different outcome would probably been the best for me.
For sure. You make great points. I mean, you command the game, and you keep the most important guy sort of engaged and trying to keep him level-headed, the pitcher, obviously, and it comes with some bruises though.
How many years did you go to college or education wise while playing baseball?
So I ended up signing right out of high school. And yeah, I passed up going to Illinois. For me, it was a really tough decision, but I just wanted to, be able to get in to professional baseball, at the youngest age possible. I felt like my window would probably be smaller than most, given how important my speed was. Looking back, there's advantages and there's disadvantages. Like I went from playing uh, 30, 40 game schedule in high school to playing 140 games.
Hmm.
And that was tough on me physically. It wasn't until I was a little bit older that I started to fill out and get stronger after, working out and learning how to train for a season. So I dealt with some injuries early on that I think, you know, kind of balanced out the advantage of starting early. But to answer your question, yeah, I went right out of high school. I'm actually back in college getting my undergrad now. But yeah, it was 10 years, 10-year gap in between.
Do you feel that being in a major setting with going into the minor leagues at a young age, that from a personal standpoint, were you ready for that big change? Because you were going to be exposed to different lifestyle, different changes that a 18-year-old is not used to seeing unless they're going to college, where they kind of get shown that world in a different way.
No doubt. I mean, honestly, that's a really great question. It was um it was a really eye-opening experience. On one hand it was amazing to be exposed to not just being around guys of all different ages. I was, obviously like the youngest in pro ball. There were a couple other guys my age, but most were out of college. And that was a good experience. They were more mature. Another great experience was just being with guys from all around the world. I had teammates from Venezuela, teammates from the Dominican, I had a teammate from Panama my first year, and obviously all around the country too. So it's really a cool experience to be in a baseball clubhouse. There's just so many different influences, and you could learn a lot from other people. Um, with that, I think being young, um, I didn't really know how to like take care of myself through a 140 game season where you're playing sometimes like 20 games in a row without a day off. I was still, kind of going to Steak and Shake after the game and like staying up late and obviously being a 18, 19-year old and having fun and that took a toll. I think where come August, September, you really start to hit that kind of mental drain,
Yeah.
physical drain. And as I got older, I really, learned, and it took going through some injuries where I just really learned the importance of nutrition, sleep, training. I think like those three things are so critical, and it's not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing, like and and then there's the whole side of just kind of the mental struggle of playing baseball and trying to perform and trying to keep your numbers at a certain level to move up. And I went through a lot of, different learning experiences through that. Like at first I'm kind of watching, the guys below me and the guys above me and, worrying about, is this guy going to take my spot or am I playing well enough to take his spot? And that's just not where you want to be. I think sometimes you can limit yourself. You might be capable of a lot more than what the guy above you is doing. And when you're just trying to hit that bar, you're kind of, not really opening yourself up to everything else you could be doing. And I just as I kept going, I really just, tried to focus on helping my team win, being where my feet were, how I could make little adjustments to my daily routine. And a big thing for me too is really working on keeping a level head. It's baseball can be an extremely frustrating sport. It's like, you fail a lot more times than you succeed. And in professional baseball, where you're playing 140 games, you could find yourself, going 0 for 15 a couple of times a year. And that's like 3, 4 nights where you go to bed like, man, I didn't do anything to help my personal statistics, and you're focused on that climb. But keeping a level head and just maintaining focus on the process of like, how am I getting better on a daily basis and the things that I can control, instead of, looking at the results and kind of just allowing yourself to ride the wave. I did that a lot early on, and I had some great teammates and coaches, Mike Schilt being one of them, that really kind of taught me what it takes to play at that level and show up every day with a consistent mentality.
Some people might view the minor league system as a competition field from looking at it from an outsider's perspective, where each person is representing themselves as an individual, trying to make it to that one spot in the majors and having to go through multiple levels. But you kind of talked about how you had to perform as a team, because if the team goes well, then the higher ups are looking at you thinking, okay, let's move them to the next step. What about the personal side? You're focused on the professional of getting to the majors. Did the challenges that you faced of maybe the long road it took you to get to the majors, or the injuries or the changes in schedule, did that ever play an effect with you from a personal standpoint with friendships, families, etc.?
For sure. Yeah. It's personally, I went through a lot of growth. Yeah, I think going through high school, you're trying to get drafted, and I did eventually, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that, and then when you get the opportunity, you obviously, it's a long road to the big leagues, and you feel like to be a success, you got to get there. And I think for me personally, like, I didn't know how to handle that my first couple years, and I would get really frustrated, and it would affect my entire mood, and I wasn't able to show up as a teammate, because I was so sort of consumed in how I wasn't playing well. And obviously, not only not being a good teammate, but I'm not like physically present to get out of that funk. I'm just sort of allowing it to get the best of me. And I think like a mistake that I was making personally, that I imagine is common for athletes, is you sort of attach your self-worth to this game. Like, my identity was kind of being a baseball player, especially, when I was having the opportunity to get drafted, and you're getting like notoriety in the community, and I felt like I was Charlie the baseball player. And um a lot of times, you lose sight of like, all you can do is put in all the work, and try to find the right resources, and do all those things to try to help you reach your potential. But you can't control, where that potential ends, and where that road ends. And I think like, when you're seeing yourself as either a success or a failure based on, what you're doing on the field, or what you're doing in your job, whatever industry it is, you're going to be riding sort of a wave of emotions, and it's not going to help you reach the potential that you're looking for. So that was big for me. I had a teammate that, challenged me for an entire season to not, show any frustration, to just, sort of be stoic. And I cannot tell you what a difference it made, not only in like my mental state, like when you kind of give in to that like pouting, um, it just, it has a way of tiring you out, and He was the best teammate I've had. His name is Alex Mejia. And that season, it was like it was so eye-opening because I just was so present, and um, it was really challenging at first, but after like a month or so, it was just kind of a part of me. And there were times in my career where I had to confront that challenge again, where things, felt like more adversity than I can handle. But I always went back to that lesson that he taught me, and it was really critical.
Looking just at your minor league experience, was there a stadium that's memorable for you that you got to play in? Something about it that maybe a fan didn't know existed, because a lot of people, they've never been to a minor league game, so they don't know those hidden ballparks that are like known in the area.
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. I could name, I'll give you a few because there's some highlights. Clinton, Iowa, it was a really old field. I think they may have redone it. If not, you gotta hurry up and get over there. It's not gonna be there long. But it was next to a dog food factory. It was, I think, Purina,
Oh,
and it just, yeah, it was known because it's like you're gonna go there and it's really gonna smell. But it was one of the oldest parks in minor league baseball, and it had like a little labyrinth to get to the dugout bathroom, and there would be a little sign over the urinal that said, Babe Ruth used this bathroom. And I don't know if it was true or not, but I always like remembered that, and it just like felt like so cool to me. It's just like a reminder that, you're a part of such like a deep history, and some of those parks are so old, and kind of so entrenched in the community. Like Clinton, even though it was felt like a tough place to play, they always had such great fans, and that was really cool. Dayton was unbelievable. They sell out pretty much every single game. So if you're ever in Dayton, Ohio, I suggest you go to a Dragons game. Me personally, Kane County was like the park for me because I grew up going to Kane County Cougars games, and just being able to play against the Cougars, I really felt like it was kind of full circle. And they have a great tradition there. It's just an old minor league park with great fans. It's far enough out of Chicago that a ton of people show up. So that was a really cool place for me.
talk about that moment where you get the call that you're going up to the major leagues. What was that like for you?
It was crazy, man. I mean, I've described it like I was such a big Sox fan, and they were so influential in my career. It was like for me like a dream scenario. And I got a call. It's like right around the trade deadline. I was in AAA and I had been playing pretty well, and I felt like I could be a piece of a trade. When I heard my phone buzzing at like 7 a.m., which is rare for minor leagues. You're usually waking up late and staying up late because you're playing at night. But it was our general manager, and I was like, oh my God, I'm about to get traded. And he told me, uh, we're trading you the Chicago White Sox, and I think you're going to be really happy with the results. I just kind of took that to mean like, there might be opportunities in the big leagues coming up. I didn't think I'd be joining the team, but it was followed up by a call with the White Sox general manager, and he told me you're going to meet the team in Detroit. And I was like, Detroit, like that's where the Tigers play. And he's like, yeah, that's right. You're going to the big leagues. And I was in the bathroom. I, had a roommate who was still sleeping, and I just like it was such a surreal moment, man. And I couldn't wait to call my brother and call my parents. Like they thought I was like they're gonna think I'm, pranking them. It was sort of like too cool. But it was to be honest with you, it was kind of a bittersweet debut for me. I um traveled to Detroit. I had a couple days off. I had been like dealing with hamstring, sort of not an injury at that point. It had been, off and on bothering me that season. I felt like I got a couple days off, I'll be good to go. But I'll say, like, I stepped on the field and I had so much adrenaline in Detroit. Like, I, felt like I could run through a wall, and my first at bat, I got a hit. I was on first next to Miguel Cabrera. Like, it was sort of like everything, you could have dreamed of. But in the sixth inning, I believe it was the sixth inning, they had runners on second and third and two outs. And, I was playing center field as an outfielder. You're thinking, like, all right, I gotta, make a play on a fly ball here and try to stop these runs from scoring. And there was a ball hitting the gap. And, like I said, I had so much adrenaline. I think, like, you're playing in AAA, you can kind of like play with that throttle a little bit, and you're sort of aware of like where your 100% is. I wasn't. I was like, I'm gonna go catch this ball and show my teammates, what I could do, what my speed can do to help the team. And unfortunately, I tore my hamstring that night and in my debut, which was for me, I mean, devastating. I like felt like you know, everything had lined up perfectly. I was seeing the ball well at the plate. And I was having a shot. The Sox were kind of beginning a rebuild. They traded, me for a veteran player. So I was going to have a lot of opportunities that season. And so that was tough. It went from being like a pretty amazing day to, um, you know, a challenge that was coming up. And it was not like a minor hamstring pull. I had to get surgery and pretty much get a full repair. So it was a long road back.
You talked about the road to recovery was a long process. Did you ever have that moment thinking, I don't know what the future is going to be like? Am I going to be able to come back? Will the team want me to be ready to go? Because baseball is one of those in any sport. It's like the game still continues. And someone's now taking that spot from you because of the injury. What was going through your mind mentally through the recovery process?
Yeah, that's a great point. And to your point, I was really focused on, by next spring training, I have to be ready. And it was sort of like I just was so focused on that. I wasn't really paying attention to what I was hearing on the outside, what doctors had to say, what trainers had to say. I was really head set on like I'm gonna do everything I can to be ready for spring training and secure that spot as my spot, because to your point, it's tough to get up there. And then when you're not on the field, and I had learned that throughout my career, other people are ready to capitalize on that opportunity. So I really was gung-ho in my rehab. I wanted to be doing as much as possible, like as soon as I was able to walk, I was, walking around the entire city kind of all day, just trying to get things moving. But it was a shock, like I had had surgeries before. This one was a different feeling afterward. I mean, it felt like I had like a cylinder block in my leg, and I yeah, it was different, and not many athletes have like a hamstring rupture the way I had ruptured it from my hip bone. And the doctor explained to me going into surgery that this was sort of an 80% recovery rate, which yeah, it was kind of shockingly low. And he's like, even, the guys who recover, it's hard, like to get to the speed that you had been. And basically, he was telling me it's going to take a ton of work, and it did, and it did not happen for me as quickly as I would like. I maintained that idea that I was going to get back for spring training, and I sort of spoke that into existence with the trainers. Um, but I was not physically right, and I just was kind of refusing to confront it. I just kept working and working and working. Um, and unfortunately, like right around the time spring training was starting, and I had been out on the field, telling everyone I was going to be ready to go. I had some coaches um, kind of observe me, and some guys with experience. I remember Mark Grudzelanek, who was my AAA manager, former Cardinal,
Yep.
kind of pulled me aside, and he was like, "Hey man, like I know you really want to get back, but just from watching you, like when you get back on the field, you're gonna want to be, 100%, and you're gonna like want to be able to show, your best self out there." Because, coaches, scouts in the big leagues, he's like, they're not gonna say like, "Oh, that guy was hurt," if you're out there and you're just not playing well. Um, I didn't really listen. I just felt like I'm gonna prove this guy wrong, and I ended up breaking my foot, and it was a stress fracture, which like was honestly like it made sense. Like what he saw is I was so choppy. My hamstring just was not strong. It wasn't, stable. Um, it wasn't fully there yet. And I was trying to do everything I would do, as if I was completely healthy. And I was relying so much on my other leg to kind of develop power and speed and slow down and all these things that I fractured my foot. And it was sort of a blessing in disguise. I mean, it was at the time I felt like, the world's ending, like I just had this big injury in my debut, and now spring training is like I'm walking around in a boot. I felt like, like it was not the impression you want to make to the fans, to your teammates, to the coaches. Um, so it was really tough at the time. And it was all sort of a result of me pushing and pushing and pushing, Um, but it allowed me to get to the bottom of things, like my hamstring was really not progressing, even in the off season. And I would just kind of was ignoring the signs. But I ended up meeting with the GM of the White Sox and talking to him honestly about sort of like some of the struggles I was having physically, despite the work that we've been putting in. And it led to me getting a second surgery that really helped. And it was totally necessary, like kind of free things up. Like that cylinder block thing wasn't just in my head. It was like I physically had so much swelling from the initial surgery that it was like compartmental syndrome, if that makes sense, is the way they described it. So after this second surgery, I found some really good trainers in Chicago. I actually trained with these guys the rest of my career. And they really listened to, exactly where I was describing I was struggling. For me, it was like I couldn't produce power when I was running, like it wasn't like I was apprehensive or scared to really push it. It was like I was like, you know, trying to rev up the engine, and it was like there was nothing there, and that was like a very scary feeling for me because speed was everything. And we kind of went back to square one and really didn't cut any corners and got my leg really strong before we even started running again. And before I knew it, I was, like as fast as I had been, I still had some like struggles with stability. Things weren't quite like 100% normal. But this was to me, it was like this was what the doctor was talking about, like it was really going to take meticulous work. And it wasn't just like, like I never had issues working hard and sweating and like getting in the gym. But this was more than that. This was like researching, nutrition. It was sort of all things combined, and it changed. Like it opened me up to the idea that like being an athlete is not just from when you show up to the field to when you go home. It's 24 hours a day, what you're putting in your body. And nutrition really changed my life at that point. I you know stopped eating out, started pretty much like predominantly cooking for myself, and made a lot of adjustments in my diet. And training was completely different. Like it wasn't just like, oh, what are we doing today? It was like we had, 3-week phases. Like the first 3 weeks, we're gonna get these movements down. Then the next 3 weeks, we're gonna get these movements down, which were a little bit more advanced. And we just progressed and progressed. And I ended up getting back. I, played in the fall league. I missed that entire season, which was tough. But I got strong. I got fast again. I played in the fall league, and I went 0 for 15 to
Oh,
start,
oh,
which was like kind of like, man, like, I just kind of like overcame this whole physical thing. Now I feel like I'm not seeing the ball like I, had been. And it was tough, man. It took a lot of time. I the next season in spring training, I was the first guy sent down to the minor leagues. And I had worked really hard. It just injuries are tough, not only for baseball players physically, but the like littlest things. Like for me, it was my back hip. I hurt, and it really forced me to change my whole stance and kind of set up in the box. And it took some searching to kind of figure it out. And 2018, I got back to the big leagues, which was a special moment for me given everything I had been through between 2016 and 2018. But I still wasn't really feeling like I was able to do what I was capable of. I was running pretty well, but I was not hitting well. And that was frustrating. And that's kind of where what I was talking about before with like the, frustration kind of starting to show itself. That was creeping back up. I had been through this whole experience getting hurt in my debut, overcoming these setbacks. And it just was like the adversity felt like it was just so much when I like got back on the field and I couldn't really hit the way I'd hit before. Um, but 2019, I got taken off the roster. And I was, that was a humbling moment. And I knew it was going to be hard to get back into the big leagues. Once you're off the 40-man roster, you have to get back on, and they have to take someone else off for you to even, get close. So, um, it kind of relaxed me a little bit, I would say, where I just felt like, now I was kind of taking on this underdog role. Um, and the worst had sort of happened, if that makes sense. But I, continued to train hard with these trainers. Like, I was a big league player. You train for the role that you want, and that was something Mike Schilt taught me, and I stuck with it. And I had a great coach in spring training, Frank Menachino. He saw me in spring training, pulled me aside, and he was like, "You can hit, man. You just don't know what you're doing right now." And I was like,
Oh,
"You." I mean, he was right. Like I was, when you're it wasn't that I didn't like know the fundamentals. It was more just like he could tell I was searching, and I think that's what hitters do. It's a game of failure, and when things, kind of start to go south, you start to second guess some things, so you try new things. And he asked me to meet him at the field every day at 6 a.m. so that we could have like a personal hour together. And I like started hitting better than I ever had in my career. It was just like a few drills that he wanted me to do daily and without even thinking. It was like very simplistic. It wasn't like he was like, giving me all this stuff. It was like, I'm gonna be throwing it up here and I want you to hit it at this part of the cage 100 times, until your hands bleed. And he just worked this bat path back into me that changed it just changed the whole trajectory of my career. I ended up hitting like 330 or 340 in the first month in AAA, and I got called right back up to the big leagues. And to me, that was really like my return, where I felt like I was really back to myself and had overcome the injury, and it was a special moment. I was so grateful to him, for recognizing, the potential in me, and really putting in the time to get me back to where I could really make an impact.
when did you feel that your career was kind of coming to an end and you're ready for that next chapter, or did that next chapter happen when you didn't expect it would?
Yeah, I would say when I didn't expect it would. After that season, I signed with the Pirates, and I felt like I was going to have a great opportunity. I was with great coaches, and spring training was awesome. But obviously, about halfway through, COVID happened, and um, about 2 months into the shutdown, teams started releasing like 30, 40 guys a day because there was this whole bargaining going on between the players union and the owners, and they were trying to like play hardball in terms of like how many games we were going to play and how much of a pay cut players were going to take. And um yeah, I was unfortunately I think one of like 30 guys, 40 guys released on the same day by the Pirates. And there was no minor leagues that season, so there was no like real opportunity to, you know, have a good year in AAA and get back up. So I was at home, and it was tough. I was not, ready for it. I felt like I had just really gotten my game back together after, a tough 3, 4 year stretch. But I was working out at Northwestern University. That was sort of where I had trained in the off season always. My high school coach's son was a hitting coach there, and he was like, "Hey, until this thing kind of shakes out, would you want to come on as like our volunteer assistant? Um, and you can continue to train here and be around the guys." And for me, it felt like a great opportunity. I really liked the program. I loved Spence Allen. Dusty Napoleon was the hitting coach that kind of, brought me into the circle. And it was a great experience. Like I felt like I really developed an appreciation for the opportunities I had, being, able to work with these college kids and share some of my experiences and all types of things, like mostly what we talked about earlier of, sort of overcoming the anxieties of trying to perform every day. For them, they're trying to keep their scholarship, and freshmen like trying to make an impact and crack the travel roster. And I really enjoyed the process of like trying to help guys get in the right mindset to achieve their potential, and not really worry about like where that lands them, but really just focusing on getting the most out of their skill set and having fun doing it. I think like we, progress in these certain areas that we've become really passionate about. And for me, and I'm speaking from experience, like sometimes like you start to put so much pressure on, hitting certain bars that you kind of lose sight of the joy and just performing and being able to actually play baseball, every day. And I wanted to help guys, who were kind of struggling with that, really get back to the roots of why they picked up a baseball to start with, because I think that's typically when your best, you know, self comes out on the field. And that was, eye-opening for me. And it also challenged me. I felt like, I had, been kind of like holding out for affiliated jobs. I was turning down a lot of independent league jobs. And I felt like, at a certain point I had to look myself in the mirror and ask myself like, why aren't I still doing this? I'm, healthy now and like I love it. Obviously, the jobs that I felt like I had earned weren't really available after what happened with COVID. And teams were kind of shrinking their roster and they were, shifting their attention to younger players, and the guys my age were kind of going by the wayside. But um, I started, to see a lot of peers of mine signing all over the place, Mexico, independent ball. And I, felt like I should be walking the walk, and not just talking the talk, so to speak. And so when the season wrapped up, I left and went to Mexico and started playing again. And it was amazing, man. I like was a really, powerful experience for me to kind of think it was all over and kind of ask myself, I guess I should say really reflect on it and decide that, I should keep giving this a go, regardless of whether or not it's where I think I should be. And eventually, I hadn't played in a while, so I got released from the team in Mexico. We were pretty good too. We had Bartolo Colon, which was cool to play alongside him, and Eric Ibar and um, Alex Mejia, my, old Cardinal teammate was on the team, so that was really cool to reconnect with him. But I signed with the Long Island Ducks after that independent ball team, played for Wally Backman, which was pretty cool. And I ended up getting signed by the Phillies and spent half a season in AAA. So it was cool. I felt like I really wanted to get back to the big leagues, obviously. Didn't happen that year, but I had a good year. I was doing my thing. I, was in the lineup every day, and you know, also I felt like being a better teammate after the whole coaching experience I had had. And it was really a great season. And the next year I played with the Chicago Dogs, hoping, I would get another chance with the affiliated team, and unfortunately it didn't happen. And I had a kid that season too, which was really exciting, experience, obviously. So that's sort of what pushed me toward, starting school and getting ready to turn the page. But that that sort of return to baseball after coaching, being released when I really wasn't expecting it. It was kind of a critical growth experience for me to, you know, have my back against the wall again after, navigating those injuries, but just really kind of going out and playing regardless of where it was, because I know it's what I love to do.
When you're not in school, what does Charlie like to do for fun? And you can't say baseball because you already love doing baseball.
Yeah, I do play with some kids in the neighborhood. I love spending time with my son. Like I think every father, would probably say that, but I take him to the beach. I'm in school now, so my wife has been working and doing a great job. I really admire her for it. It's a lot of work at times, but I wake up with him and I get him on my bike and we go down to the beach and watch the sunrise. And I love to be at the beach. I paddleboard a lot. I've been working on my golf game. It's still terrible. Um, but yeah, kind of taking on new challenges outside of baseball athletically is a ton of fun for me. Like, I have a lot of family. My sisters live out in Colorado and they do a lot of mountain biking, so I've been getting into that a little bit. I mean, mostly I love to be outside, and I love to be up early and you know, spending time with my family and being a father. It's really pretty unbelievable.
So I'm usually asking this question at the beginning of the interview because you kind of talked about that baseball was that dream job. Now, with you being in school now, what is that dream job that you're wanting to come from that?
Yeah, it's been a lot of kind of searching over the past couple years, but I do feel like I have a pretty clear idea lately. Kind of going back to what I was saying with coaching, I really loved coaching, but I felt like, I liked working on the mental side more so than, teaching the X's and O's. Like I love baseball and being out there and doing work with hitters and outfielders, but I really enjoyed kind of, talking with guys about what's sort of getting in their way, whether it's on the field or off the field. I feel like I've been through a lot of different experiences, both as a player and as a person, over the course of my career. And I want to be able to use that. I want to be able to use those experiences to kind of help support guys and hopefully be able to take something from the things I've been through and allow them to gain something from it. So I'm finishing up a degree in psychology. I have about like a year left in my undergrad. And I'm thinking about going into social work to be a licensed clinical social worker and be able to work with both athletes and non-athletes on things happening in their lives, for athletes probably more specifically off the field, um, and just try to help them the best way I can to be able to reach their potential and really enjoy their lives and their careers.
I love hearing that because it talks about your passion for what you were doing prior to school with helping people and from an athletic standpoint and the mental focus. And now you're able to hopefully turn that into that career aspect. And you're on your way to get there. And we know that it's going to happen because baseball has taught you to kind of focus on what's the big picture. What are you wanting to get out of that journey that you're on, and you've had so many avenues that you've been on with it, where now you're really taking advantage of taking that big picture and what do you want to do with it? And you're going to school, you're making that difference into reaching that end goal. So getting that job is kind of like that big league aspect for you. That's going to get you to the big league for you and being able to work hard to get to that goal, just in a different way from a career aspect than a baseball aspect.
Yeah, I love the way you frame that. I mean, I'll be honest, it's sort of stressful. I think you feel like a fish out of water at times, like going, everything is so, athletic focus from such a young age to kind of having a late start on, most people who are trying to figure out their careers either after high school or after college. But yeah, when you put it like that, I do feel like, man, I've really focused on a long-term challenge before and put my best foot forward. So yeah, I appreciate that. I think apply the same skills and all will work out. I definitely feel like it would be like a big league type opportunity. I mean, just to be able to, have the license to help guys and make a difference and make a positive, contribution, it would, really give me a lot of fulfillment.
I think you brought up such a great point with the age aspect, where age is just a number. If you're going to college at an older than the typical age of a college student, that shouldn't matter because everyone has different paths that they're on. Sometimes people get to it right away when they come out of high school. Sometimes it's in a different path because they maybe went the work route, kind of what you did. You went that work route, and now you're going to this path. So I think you bring up a great point that people are listening to this, that they know that if they're in that same situation, they can have that confidence to go back to school or go for the first time and really build that path that they want.
For sure. Yeah. I had a lot of sort of fear about school. In high school, I think a lot of people could relate to this. There's so much stuff going on, whether it's like with clubs you're involved in or sports or social aspects. Um, I felt like school was hard, like I was not the best student. And it can be hard, don't get me wrong, but I've really noticed being older and just having, more sort of maturity and just a slower lifestyle. It's come a lot easier and yeah, I would encourage anyone. I mean, I was not a strong student growing up, but I've really enjoyed my time in school now. And I just, I say to like my wife, like I was always trying to take shortcuts before because I didn't really, put the time in to really just read the directions, that each class is presenting and try to get something out of it. I think when you are taking classes you're interested in, which a lot of times in college you get the opportunity to do, it can be really enjoyable. And that's the experience I've had so far.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Yeah, I think honest self-reflection and assessment has been the biggest thing for me. You know, I I've always been a hard worker, but a big thing for me has been asking myself tougher questions about like, am I, choosing the best resources and outside of when I'm working on this task, am I doing all the right things to put me in the right headspace to have success? I think taking care of yourself is critical to achieving whatever you're trying to do. And I referenced a little bit throughout my career. I had to make adjustments, and I'm really happy I, went through those experiences because they've helped me as I've moved on from baseball to, just really focusing on my health and well-being, and allowing the rest to sort of happen. When you're taking care of yourself and following your passions, I think the work tends to come pretty easy.
Well, Charlie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thanks so much for having me on, Alex. This was a blast.